looky here, boys.
What's
We're
up,
back.
fellas?
We're back again.
Shit, this hat game is ridiculous today. That's all I. That's our first thing I noticed. Our fucking hat game is ridiculous today.
If we keep this up, we're gonna have a segment in the beginning of the podcast where we just talk about our caps and why we chose what we chose. But
For real,
that's a good observation.
You got to tell the fans what that is, bro, because you're looking pretty extra crispy on the headwear today.
Well, this is a Phillies cap with roses on the side, so it's pretty cool with the pink brim. It's nice. It's with the old school P. But yeah,
I like that.
Styling.
Benny the Butcher's got looks like a little throwback over there.
Rockets throwback, cuz going back to the glory days. Right now in this rebuild, had to get a new hat of the good old days, the golden days.
Keep yourself engaged. Keep yourself engaged with the fan base. I like it, and it's a nice little
Keep
throwback.
myself from jumping ship, rolling.
Like you did with the Bills, huh?
Exactly. Some would say.
Nice throwback nonetheless, but guys, it's good to be back as we talking about sports, and we're here with another divisional breakdown, the NFC North. Last week we came at you guys with the AFC North. We had a couple of division picks. Hope you guys caught that, and if you didn't, and you're here with us today, breakdown, the NFC North. Last week we came at you guys with the AFC North.
Sorry, you got your volume on?
Yeah, that's me. My bad.
Hope you guys.
Sorry, I'm just watching.
Difficulties. It's okay. Yeah, that might be the viewer that we have right now. But anyways, we're here with the NFC North division that's pretty much been run by the Packers the last couple of years, and I mean, for as far as I can remember, often challenged by a different team each year, whether it be the Bears or the Vikings. In most cases, haven't seen the Lions compete in a little while. But again, like I said, this is a division that the Packers, if we're going to get into the odds right now, you usually find them around minus 300 plus historically from what I remember looking at, going into the season, and they always find a way to cash it. So, I mean, whether or not you like laying juice, it's a pretty good investment taking the Packers to win this division because it's a pretty consistent thing if you want to go back and look at the history since Aaron Rodgers has been there. But anyways, we're still here to break it down because there's been a lot of change with some of these teams with coaches and just new regimes in two of the teams with the Vikings and Bears, but we'll get into that later. Guys, how are you guys doing? Everybody good today? Everybody had a good week so far?
Oh, yeah, man. Good week. I'm excited that football's back. We got the that Raiders game and Jaguars, which was okay. Gave us a little bit of taste, but then we got the Hard Knocks coming up. That's, I didn't see it, but I heard it was really good. And then just getting ready here, man. Getting ready for week one is it? Or like unofficially week one, but not regular season, whatever it is. I'm just excited to talk football. We got a couple fantasy leagues that are starting up. I'm excited. You like text your friends, hey, when's the draft? What day is it? Those juices start flowing. Like, oh man, it's boys. It's time, boys. It's time.
We're getting closer. Ben, how are you doing?
Yeah, for sure. I'm doing good, man. I actually was able to catch that Hard Knocks episode. Caught it this morning. And I would say it's pretty good. It's hard not to be a fan of Dan Campbell, right? Their coach. I think a lot of people were already fans of him based on his, speech, his introductory speech when he talked about biting them in the kneecaps. Yeah, he goes hard in the show. He participates in the drills. He gets dirty. It's going to be pretty good. And they also previewed that the in-season team was going to be the Arizona Cardinals, so that's going to be intriguing as well.
In week 7, when Nuke's back.
Yeah. I did see the Cardinals got chosen to be the in-season Hard Knocks team. Well, whether or not that's a good thing, it's pretty entertaining to have an inside look at the teams throughout the season. And that was actually one of the things I wanted to talk about before we get into the NFC North was that Hard Knocks episode. Heard a lot of good things about Dan Campbell, like Ben said, and Aiden Hutchinson. I saw a clip of him. I guess they were doing the rookie hazing kind of where they have him go and sing out in front of the talent show out in front of the team, and things got a little wild. But Dan Campbell, like you said, makes for a good character to watch throughout the preseason for Hard Knocks.
And they kind of went through his coaching tree and how he got there rolling. And I mean, he he's under the Bill Parcells coaching tree. So, he was around for Bill Parcells. They said just on what is that called when they go and they're not getting paid?
Oh, like interns?
He was on an internship, and after 1 year, they made him the tight ends coach. So
nice.
Then it stuck, and then Sean Payton hit him up after he was an interim head coach. Where he was at, he joined the Saints, won the Super Bowl, and now he's here where he is. So he's a pretty respected guy, and it looked like the team respected him throughout the episode. I mean, obviously they're going to try and show us, the best look at the team that they're covering, but yeah, man, it was a good first episode, I would say.
Definitely a player's coach, I guess, if you want to throw out terms. He's a guy who can get his team motivated. Despite their record last year, they went like 3-13-1. We'll get into it a little bit later. They were pretty competitive throughout, and they were a team that was always a tough out despite their record. They always fought for their coach. So,
and usually with the Hard Knocks, it's the teams that have that underdog story, or the teams that you don't expect to be, in the limelight as much. So Dan Campbell is like the poster child for, underdog. Was a player, now the coach, a la Dwayne Johnson, The Rock in the Baller series, kind of thing that you always kind of root for. So I could see where HBO went with it. Also, I think a lot of it had to do with Detroit. I kind of heard that the city has recently been economically hit strong, and it's one of the poorest cities. And recently a bunch of, I guess, millionaires, billionaires, whatever, trying to revamp the city, making more buildings and trying to get that wealth back to the city. So, I mean, that could have had somewhat to do with it as well. But I look forward to seeing it now that Ben said that it was good.
And, Hard Knocks is good publicity. I see we all win here, Ron, talking about good PR, or talking about the Kyler situation, I think. But
yeah,
nonetheless, it's
the Kyler situation, but
good being in the limelight for sure, especially if you're Detroit. It's a team that's not really featured too much throughout the season. But I wanted to talk about one more thing before the NFC North, and it's on the flip side of good PR, and that's Desean Watson. We were talking about his suspension last week when we were breaking down the Browns and the AFC North, and it had just come out that it would be 6 games, but the NFL was appealing the NFL's ruling. Just kind of how that works with the independent arbitrator. But anyways, it came out that Roger Goodell, the commissioner, was looking for a year-long suspension. It's probably going to be a little bit longer than 6 games for sure. Whether or not they get the full season, what do you guys think? Is Desean Watson done, at least for the foreseeable future? He's going to play in the preseason. Which is weird.
Yeah, I would say he's not gonna play this season at all.
Same, man. Once Goodell kind of openly comes out and says something, it usually happens, or it has a lot of influence on the people that are making that decision, whoever's making it. I mean, this is huge. Like we talked about last time, I think it was like 46 total counts. And then anytime, to me nowadays, it has to do with male athletes and, having issues with females. Not that this was a domestic situation, but regardless, it was kind of like the male athlete superstar, messing with predatory, women who, aren't, this and that. It's just bad PR. This is like going again, talking about PR again. This is bad PR for the NFL, and Goodell's not going to have any of it, man.
Yeah, real quick, shout out to the chat. We got Gene in the chat saying he already got a whole year suspension. I don't know if that's definite, but I guess he's got the inside scoop. But shout out Gene for joining us. Rick also saying he loved how Dan Campbell joined the team with the workouts. Respect. Rolling with the Kyler Murray take. So shout out to y'all for joining us tonight live.
For sure. All right. Well, that was a little news and notes. You guys ready to get into the NFC North?
Yeah, this exciting division. Let's do it.
As always, we start at the top. We give a little bit of flowers to the division champs. And like I said in the opening, it's usually these guys. It's usually the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers himself. They went 13-4 last year, undefeated at Lambeau in the regular season, 5-4 on the road, 5-1 against their division. Usually leads to good things. They won the division, but they lost to the 49ers at home in a memorable game. Snow game, lost to the West Coast team. I think was it in overtime? I'm not too sure, but they lost 13-10 nonetheless. against Jimmy G and the 49ers at home, 13-10. I just got to say it again. Another disappointing end to the season for them. But anyways, they're 15-1 last 2 seasons at home, and they're 10-2 the last 2 seasons versus the division. They own this division. They own the North. They're a good bet at home straight up. If you want to include them in any parlays, I'm pretty sure it's going to be safe to do so this year. They had 9 games decided by 1 score, 8 points or less last year, and they were 6-3 in those games. They got Aaron Rodgers. They're going to win a lot of those last drive games for sure. They're favored to win it again in 2022 at -190. They're the favorites. That's a little short for their history. They're usually around like -300. But the big question here, no Devontae, no problem. 1,600 yards goes out the window, 170 targets as we were talking about offline. And will it be the same as usual for Green Bay? Is LaFleur and Rodgers and the supporting cast that they have now enough to overcome what they're losing with Devontae Adams, who was a big part of Ben's argument for taking the Raiders so seriously this year in the NFC West? No, it's true though. I mean,
laugh it up, Ron. Laugh it up. Let him roll it. Let him laugh it up.
I was with you there. I'm just saying that it was another guy too who, Mr. Quarterback Carr, who had some major influence on you also, man. So I'm just laughing because you were pretty adamant about the Raiders this year, definitely. So
only 1-0 team to start.
That was a good episode, which you can go back and watch. Whoever's watching, if you want to watch.
And speaking of laughs, Devontae Adams was in the news for saying, I'm going from one Hall of Famer to another, so there's going to be a little bit of adjustment. Aaron Rodgers said the same thing. One Hall of Famer to another, there's going to be a little adjustment from Devontae Adams to Adam Lazard. That's the big thing here. They lost Devontae Adams and Zadarius Smith. They added Caleb Watson, the highly touted receiver from North Dakota State. Let me see, where is it? Yeah, Christian Watson, North Dakota State. With their pick from the Las Vegas Raiders, which they traded for when they traded Devontae Adams, they got Quay Walker, a guy who dropped from Georgia, middle linebacker. So they got a couple of Georgia guys actually, but are you guys in on the Packers again this year? We see their schedule up. We see their odds to win the NFC Championship plus 400. I think that's probably the second shortest odds on the board per DraftKings. Their season win total, 11. They won 13 last year to win the NFC North, -190. Don't even want to look at to make the playoffs. Pretty much can book it unless Aaron Rodgers goes down. Aaron Rodgers to win MVP, plus 1,000.
That's nothing.
Or Aaron Rodgers over under. I just wanted to throw this out there. 31.5 passing touchdowns. And, we talk about Devontae Adams leaving. That was 16 touchdowns or 11 touchdowns for Devontae walking out. So, again, I ask you guys, how do you feel about the Packers this year? Are you in on them? Are you thinking this is a year that the reign over the North comes to an end?
Yeah, looking at their schedule, it actually looks pretty favorable. I mean, you see, 1-2 tough games in there. They have a pretty weak division, obviously. And, then they play the Cowboys, the Giants, the Eagles, and the Commanders. So the schedule's set up pretty nice for them. Minus the Bills and the Rams sprinkled in there, the Bucks, but the Bucks are dropping like flies as well. So for them, it's looking like another promising season. I could see why the playoff odds are at -500. Like you said, to win the North is under 2-1. I mean, it pretty much, we're going to talk about the Vikings, but it comes down to how serious you take them this year. You expect just a Packers team led by Aaron Rodgers to automatically be penciled in for, winning the division. That's just, it's like death, taxes, and the Packers to win the division. I guess that it's safe to say in those senses. But I like the way the schedule shapes up for them. Like I said, man, now I see why their win total is at 11. I don't see any value in him winning MVP at plus 1,000. Just what are the odds that they give it to a guy 3 years in a row? And as controversial as he has been in the offseason, you kind of just think that he's turned voters off. So I don't. Yeah, I think that they'll be, and well, it's hard to say they'll be better value during the season, especially because I'm talking about how easy their schedule looks. But I don't see any value in that number because I don't think that there's a chance that he wins MVP this year.
Is that 31.5 passing touchdowns playable for you either way? He threw for 37 and 4 last year.
Yeah, so he did, and a lot. And how many of those, did he lose by that went to Adams?
That was 11.
11, yeah. So I'm not a big fan of the receiving core that he has. I think that it's kind of a wait and see with that receiving core. Not anybody that I'm, targeting for fantasy wise or anything. As far as the receivers, you got to see who's going to be the guy that's going to separate themselves. I know, Lazard. If Lazard's the number one on your team, it's, that's nothing to praise. Honestly, you're just getting it done on the strength of Aaron Rodgers at that point. So I'm not in love with.
Ron, this is a team that's tormented us Cowboys fans for the past couple of years in the playoffs when we've made it. It's a team that we don't like. So as unbiased as you can be, because it's hard for me. What's your take on the Packers this season?
I don't like. First of all, whoa, Rolly Martinez in the chat. That's out of nowhere. But what's up to Rolly? Thanks for watching us. First of all, Dez caught it. That's the point that I didn't make. Dez caught it. But on a serious note, man, I really don't see anything here worth touching. I love them to win the North, but at 190, I don't know if I take the juice. Aaron Rodgers, 31.5 touchdowns. I'm thinking I'm taking that because a lot of the teams up there are teams that have great defenses. I mean, the Bears are trash, but their defense has always been solid. Then they have, like Ben said, the Bills, another great defense there. The Cowboys, that secondary was great last year. The Rams, so they have, the Vikings always play them tough. And don't sleep on the Lions. Dan Campbell, we said at the beginning of the show, who maybe not win some games, but their defense might be tough. And with less weapons this year, and I think they're going to go, in my opinion, this year, heavy on the run game because Dylan has came out as, kind of like the Tony Pollard-ish, to the Zeke Elliott. I think they might, slow the game down a little bit more because Rodgers doesn't have all those targets. So that's something that I would probably touch on, the under 31.5 passing touchdowns. But other than that, nothing that I really love out of these futures here.
You, Ben, are you playing anything on this board?
Yeah, no, I don't like anything on the board. I am interested in some in the backfield in fantasy football, but as far as for the board betting, no, I don't. And the Washington Commanders is another sneaky, underrated defense when they're at full strength as well. So I see Ron's point. There's going to have to be a wide receiver that separates himself and makes them legit. So I'm interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah, for me, when I look at this, you talk about the schedule. You guys already mentioned it. I had them pegged right around 11 wins. For me, the division, I think, comes down to how they do against the Vikings. They get them at home towards the end of the season. That could very well be for the NFC North right there, because you got to think the Packers, we talked about them going 8-0 last year at home. You got to think they hold court in the season opener against the Vikings. So that's kind of how I looked at it. I looked at this division. So I have them right now penciled in as a champ, but as Ron said, a minus 190. I'm not sure if I'm willing to take the juice on that, but nonetheless, the Packers should be competitive once again, because they do have Aaron Rodgers, who's been a perennial. I mean, if you want to say QB1, he's been there for much of his career. He's had an off season here or there, injury plagued season, as most people do every now and again. Ben, you're the fantasy guy here. What are you looking for in the Packers? We have a couple other guys listed here based on their rankings. Any takers?
Yeah, you see, like that quote. If that's Alan Lazard, like get out of here, bro. Like shut the shit. Like, all right, bro.
Hey, he had 8 touchdowns last year.
You're trying to make you're trying to make preseason headlines. All right, but that's a wild take.
He's just saying he wants to be the best receiver in the league. What do you want him to say? I want to be a middle of the pack receiver.
I want to be a proven number one. Like there's levels. Let's take steps, okay? You can't just go from 0 to 100. At least I don't think so. I could be proven wrong. Lazard, do you all see him as more of a guy who you might draft with value this year because of all the question marks, and he'll be a decent keeper option because he does take maybe that top 15, top 10 wide receiver jump, or is he more likely to be in the exact same spot next year? That's my question to you all about it.
See, the thing is, just by doing the math, we talked about Devontae Adams leaving. That's 168 targets out the window. You got to think that gets occupied somehow. You got to think Adam Lazard is going to be in line for more volume just out of virtue of there being no Devontae Adams, who's a target monster. So I do think he's going to finish above that wide receiver 48 that we have listed here. And it just depends, what you're doing with your team in the draft, whether or not you want to take him. Maybe you're a little bit running back heavy and you see him come around in those mid to later rounds and you want to grab him. I think it's definitely worth a shot. I mean, being Aaron Rodgers' number one receiver, I mean, that means something. But the only thing is, it's not a definite thing. It's not definitively going to happen. It's just he is number one on the depth chart. So you got to think he's in line just right off the bat.
You think he sees double-digit targets then? You think he averages double-digit targets?
I mean, I think he'll get close to about 8. I mean, let me look at how many targets he had last year. I mean, I was talking about Davante Adams.
Yeah, because I'm saying they lost a lot of targets with him, so you got to think the looks are going to go somewhere.
Yeah,
if he's going to establish himself as a number one guy and he's getting 10 targets a game, then there's a lot of value in where he's going at wide receiver 48.
And they lost Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who also had 55 targets. So that's more than 200 targets out the window. I know they drafted that Christian Watson kid from North Dakota State, but it has to be Lazard or, the running backs that we have listed here, like Aaron Jones, who's a pass catching back.
Tonyan still there?
Tonyan, yeah.
I want to say
yeah, and Ron, are you touching Allen Lazard, Ron?
Yeah, for sure I am, man. I mean, before I do, Rolly said Lazard first round for sure and keeper every year.
I think he's being sarcastic there, but the keeper, he could be one of those keeper guys.
Yeah, that's why I was like, if you do that, that's a reach. But anyway, yeah, man, I think at wide receiver 48, if you go 2 running backs and you have a receiver, or I mean, what's his predicted draft slot, like 6th roundage?
Wide receiver 48, you got to think he's like round like 9 or 10.
Oh,
yeah,
late, I mean, bro. If you can get him that late, I mean, I don't see why not. And another thing that we have to ask ourselves is he a talented receiver, or is all the hype because of who his quarterback is? Does Aaron Rodgers make the receiver? Or does a receiver need to have talent? I mean, Davante Adams came out of nowhere. He has crazy talent. Everybody can see that. But look who's throwing them the rock. So that's the thing that we're going to find out about Lazard this year, because if he gets all those opportunities that you guys he's saying and you guys are saying, and he gets all those looks, but he can't do anything with them, then he might kind of fade. Yeah, he might kind of fade. So, but in round 9 or 10, shit, I definitely get this guy just because there's nobody else over there in Green Bay.
The potential is there for sure.
Yes, the ceiling, like they say, is really high on him.
Before we get to the backfield, is it fair to say that he's guaranteed to have a better season than Juju? Or is that a question? Is that a fair question? Juju being with the Chiefs, both guys in about the 9th or 10th round available in some mock drafts.
So you're saying either Juju or Lazard?
Yeah.
I think it's a fair question just because Juju's in a similar situation. I mean, Tyreek Hill, that's over 100 targets walking out the door too. The only thing is, Lazard does have rapport with Aaron Rodgers already. So it's just depending who has better rapport with their quarterback. I don't know.
I'm going Lazard over Juju.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same. I'm going Lazard over Juju just because Kelsey takes a lot of those targets away. Lazard is probably going to be the first look, and Juju's not going to be the first look over there in KC.
Gotcha. All right, well, let's get to the backfield, boys. Have you all been Aaron Jones fans? Aaron Jones obviously has started sharing the backfield with A.J. Dillon. We saw it for a large part last year. We expected to be a running back by committee this year. Aaron Jones' draft capital has, also reflected. He's going later second round, probably end of the second round. Before he was going, at that turn, probably at number 10, being one of those back-to-back picks, if not pick number 9. So are you all turned off to Aaron Jones this year? Or are you all still buying that Aaron Jones stock with A.J. Dillon there sharing the backfield with him?
I'll go first because I had Jones the last 2 years, and 2 years ago he tore it the hell up. That's why I got him last year. And then mid-season, man, I was already like questioning myself: do I even put him as a starting RB, or am I flexing this guy? Because Dillon was getting looks, man, and he was getting the goal line looks. If Jones wasn't catching a pass, 10, 15 yards away from the end zone and trying to break it, you weren't going to get that touchdown from him because he was a smaller back, and they were going to Dillon on the goal line inside the 10. So I'm not touching him this year. Pause on that. But I'm not, looking to draft him. If he's there and he falls, of course. But other than that, he's not somebody that's on my
He's
target
off the
board.
draft board, Ron?
He's not on my target board.
Yeah, two-part answer for me. Historically, I haven't been an Aaron Jones guy. I haven't really drafted him in the past from what I can remember. I think maybe once. But, I put up this stat here. He had 9 games in 2021 with almost less than double digits. That's, in a PPR leagues, that's pretty scary. That's a lot of variance because he still did rank out high as a running back in PPR leagues. But drafting him, you got to know there's a little bit of variance there because of like stuff that Ron mentioned with him sharing time with Dylan. But this year, because Ben did mention he's falling in the middle to the back of the second round. If you went wide receiver in the beginning and you want to get a running back because you want to grab a premium or close to a premium running back 1, getting him at his current draft capital isn't that bad because like we were talking about with Davante Adams, the targets are going to go somewhere and he's definitely the pass catching back. So PPR, I'll see what's up if I can catch him towards the back of the second round.
I've never been a big Aaron Jones fan just because I think that it all goes through Aaron Rodgers, obviously. But this year, I'm not at all. I think that there's a lot more value in A.J. Dillon. Honestly, Jones is off of my draft board. I see the situation that you say, Roland. Maybe you're at the 4 pick, 5 pick. You go Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson. And on the way back, you want to get your guy who's, you think fringe running back 1, or at least you feel comfortable, semi-comfortable with him at running back 1. So you take Aaron Jones. But honestly, he's off my board. I'd rather, take A.J. Dillon later. And, the running backs, they fall. And even then, he gets his looks kind of like Kareem Hunt. They still get their share, and they usually do well with their share. When they come in, they're pretty effective running backs. A.J. Dillon's very effective. Ron talked about the red zone looks. He's a guy that I'm looking, if I'm going 0 wide receiver, I'm looking to grab A.J. Dillon for sure.
And we also talk about Davante Adams leaving targets. A lot of those targets were close, like inside the 5. He scored a couple of those touchdowns. He's not quite on Mike Evans' level.
Like on fades and shit like that
and stuff, but those fades, the quick ins and slants, he was killing guys all season on those easy touchdowns.
I read
that could go to Dylan running the ball is what I'm trying to say. Those red zone targets could go to Dylan in terms of running. So that's a good point, Ben.
I read this article where supposedly they went up to LaFleur and said that they wanted to be on the field at the same time, like they didn't mind, running maybe like a split back set or something.
Sure, and they could do that. They're going to have to find a way to get creative now that their wide receiver 1's gone. But the wide receiver 1 leaving, that directly affects the quarterback. Ben, Aaron Rodgers, this could be a little bit on his low end of his draft stock and where he's been in the past. Are you taking any bites at Aaron Rodgers this year? Pops?
No, not at all. I think that Aaron Rodgers might even be a guy who might be there like streamable. I think that's where we are. I think that they're going to be a team that plays team football. I think that they're going to be a team that plays really good team football, bro, and wins games running the ball and not having Aaron Rodgers throw for 350, 400 yards. I think that they're going to try and, scale back and save some of that shit for the playoffs, bro, if they can, because that's where they've come up short. So I could see a down season in stats, kind of how you said, Ron, that you were on his under in touchdowns. I won't touch the number, but I do see a down year for him. And fantasy relevance, like I said, the ceiling I don't think is that high with so many question marks at wide receiver.
So you're saying that there's even drafts where you think that people don't draft, like he goes undrafted?
No, he's going to get drafted.
I'm talking about during the year. Yeah. He's definitely going to get drafted, but I'm talking about during the season.
Oh, like streamable as in like plug and play?
And if they go to that style where they're just, running the ball, not airing it out, they don't have Davante Adams anymore. I'm just saying I see a down year for Aaron Rodgers.
Someone's going to cut Aaron Rodgers from their fantasy team.
Hey, we've seen way crazier things.
Never know.
We've seen way crazier.
He's going to get picked up on the waiver wire and go off the second half of the season.
So you think he finishes as a QB1 this year in fantasy?
I don't think so.
I think he'll finish fringe. I think he'll finish right around QB 12. I think he has potential. But like Ben said, and Ron, I think they're going to find other ways to get it done this year. And they're going to be a little bit more balanced because I do think Davante Adams, man, he is a very, very talented guy. Usually, wide receivers don't move the needle. And, you can make the argument that he really hasn't because their win total's at 11. I think they might be around that total, but fantasy-wise, I do have interest in Aaron Jones and Allen Lazard, but that's it.
Yeah, I'm just talking about like more of like a Matt Ryan play style of like the way that they run their offense. As far as like run the ball, maybe some bootlegs, but not always shotgun unless you're down and need to do it. Yeah. I'm thinking that they just play more traditional.
Yeah, no, I get that. So let's just wrap up the Packers here. Just in conclusion, I don't think anybody had any season-long bets on these guys based on what we saw on the board. Although we're still expecting them to be towards the top of the NFC North. We're just not willing to take anything that's there on the board. And fantasy-wise, we're pretty much out on most of these guys. Or I'm in on Aaron Jones and Lazard with Ron. Ben likes Lazard too. Dillon. And Ben's buying A.J. Dillon over Aaron Jones in terms of where you can get them in drafts.
Yeah. These are players who, if they fall to you, you'll get them, or if you get lucky, but nobody that I think we're trying to reach for.
Yeah. Definitely. All right. Well, let's move on. The Packers are going to be a team that we talk about all year because they're usually in contention. But let's get to this next team, a team that I think is usually expected to be in contention because they're usually considered a high-powered, well-balanced team. That is the Minnesota Vikings in 2020 or 2021, excuse me. They were 8-9, 5-3 at home, 3-6 on the road. They did pretty good against the division. They went 4-2. They had 14 games decided by one score or less, and they went 6-8 in those games. Captain Kirk fell short a couple times, but it wasn't all his fault. There were some offensive line problems at times this past year. But anyways, you see their schedule up here and some of their odds. They're expected to be right there. Middle of the pack in terms of their Super Bowl odds, about plus 4,000, plus 1,800 to win the NFC Championship. To win the NFC North, they're the second team favored, plus 265, and their season totals at over under 9, minus 120 to the over. To make the playoffs, yes, is at minus 115, no, minus 105, and just for fun, I put Kirk Cousins to win MVP at plus 1,800. You look at their offseason, they had a lot of draft picks. A lot of defense. You see with their first couple picks, they shored up the secondary with a safety and a cornerback out of Clemson. Guys that they lost: Anthony Barr, Michael Pierce, and Xavier Woods, Tyler Conklin, their tight end. But real quick, I do want to mention before we move on, they did get a new head coach. No more Zimmer. It's Kevin O'Connell, the former head coach from the Rams. So people are expecting big things for this guy right here, Justin Jefferson. We'll get to fantasy in a little bit, but I'll lead off on the Vikings real quick because I am pretty high on them. I like the way their schedule shapes up. It's not one of the stronger schedules. The NFC North, they benefit this year from playing the AFC East, which is expected to be down this year. And we mentioned last year they went 4-2 against the division. So I expect them to hold court against teams like the Bears and the Lions. And if they can sweep those teams, maybe split with the Packers, that's what it's going to come down to for them this year. But I do like the Vikings a lot this year. I have them slotted like around 11 wins this year. So I would take that total, and I like them to make the playoffs. I'm in on the Vikings. It might spurn me because like we say, Kirk Cousins is called Captain Kirk, but sometimes it's a bad, some craziness goes on with Kirk Cousins as your quarterback is all I'm trying to say, especially come prime time. Hard guy to trust, but I like the way this team's built. I'm a big Justin Jefferson guy. Also have him listed there to win the receiving yards title at plus 800. He is a favorite over Cooper Kupp, just slightly. But do you guys like the Vikings this year? Are you in on them? New head coach, former Rams head coach, as I mentioned, so it comes from a high-powered offense. Are you guys buying the Vikings this year?
I'm all in, man. I'm not all in the way I'm all in, and I'm not all in the way Ben is with the Raiders, but I'm kind of close. Man. It seemed like that stat that you put up out of the 14 games, they were they lost like 8 of those. Yeah, they were 6-8, and we know that the talent is there. Cook and Jefferson. It's just it felt like Zimmer could have been that piece that just, kind of like, again, not to, home team, but the way we say with McCarthy, like all the talent's there, then you have McCarthy doing stupid shit, like, running out the clock, not even getting the playoffs. So it just felt like all the talent was there, but they just couldn't put it together, kind of like Campbell coming in. And just like you said, he's coming from the Rams. They have, I'm sure their ethic there is way different than what Zimmer had for them. And that mentality of winning, he's also taking there as well. Zimmer was with the Cowboys for a while, but they weren't really doing much when, he was there with the Cowboys as well. Their schedule is very favorable, and I'm going to go out not even on so much of a limb here. We just got finished talking about the Packers, how we don't expect great things from them. So at plus 265 to win the NFC North, I think they're at least there with the Packers, all season, maybe a game or two away. And at plus 265, to me, it's just a 2-team race here. Why not take, those odds and potentially get a nice bet at the end of the year with that win NFC North future?
So you're in. You're calling your shot.
I'm in.
You're calling your shot. You know what they say: if you come at the king, you best not miss. So Ron, you're taking your shot. I'm there with you. I don't know. I'll take him to win the division because I think it's a toss up. But I like your play with the value plus 265. If you're gonna take a shot, might as well. Ben, what are your thoughts on the Vikings? I know you don't like Kirk Cousins, but what are your thoughts?
I mean, y'all gave me shit for liking Derek Carr, and I mean, here you are talking about
I didn't
Kirk
say nothing about
Cousins-led
Kirk.
Team this way.
I didn't say it. Hey, don't forget who the backup is.
Yeah,
that's strong backup, Kellen Mond.
Come on, cuz that's your way of kind of tiptoeing around it, not mentioning Kirk Cousins, because that's what it comes down to. Does he take a step up, or does he stay as that mediocre, average quarterback who sucks every time he's on primetime football? How many of these games are primetime? How many of these winnable games are primetime? That's a big question because he sucks on primetime. So I get it. I mean, I get the hype. You also got to think about Cook. He's missed games the last 3 seasons. You know that he's going to miss 2 to 4 games as
those
a
Madison games.
Yeah, those Madison games where you handcuff either for those 2 to 4 weeks, or it happens late in the season where everybody's scrambling on the wire for Madison. But it's gonna happen because it just happens every single year, bro. It's expected. It's not wishing anything bad upon anybody. It's just what happens. It's part of it. So I understand, especially with the step back that I expect, the Packers to take, losing, the head of their receiving core. So I'm still on the fence with the Vikings. The schedule also favorable like the Packers is. They play the same divisions. So the schedule's favorable. Let's just see what this new coach is all about. I'm willing to wait and see. I'm not going to
No wagers. No wagers here.
No. I think Justin Jefferson at plus 800 probably is my favorite wager just because of the jump that everybody's expecting him to get. And last year, too, he had a lot of drops, man. I don't want to shit on him, but he had a lot of drops.
A lot of points left on the board.
A lot of points left on the field. So I do like that receiving yards leader with the way that people are hyping him up to go in, fantasy drafts and stuff. I'll take a piece of that plus 800.
All right. I'm not going to take them to win the division, but I do like them to make the playoffs, and I like their season total. So I'm on both of those. Or I'll maybe dwindle it down at the end of the show when we recap to 1. But I'm definitely on the Vikings this year. I'm high on them. Like I said, I have them around 11 wins if all things go well. And that's kind of being conservative, giving them a split with the Packers and losing on the road in most of their games. But anyways, I like the Vikings this year. Let's get to them.
Last year, remember, Rodgers lost the first game, and everybody started tripping out. And the Vikings have the Packers at home week 1. So that could be, that could either make their first half or maybe break their first half. But if they get that win week 1 at home against the Packers, then they go to the Eagles and they host the Lions and they go to the Saints. Then they get the Bears. They could catch a little run those first 5 weeks. But, I mean, wishful thinking if you have them to win the AFC North, I guess.
I like it. I'm not going to fight you on them to win the NFC North because, like I said, I'm high on the Vikings as well. And a lot of people are going to be high on them in terms of fantasy. You see a lot of guys listed up here in the top 50 from Kirk Cousins all the way down to Irv Smith Jr. The question I got to ask everyone, like Ben said, is excited about this new head coach. I mean, he was known for scheming up Cooper Kupp getting open every single time, it seemed like, and leading to massive target share. Justin Jefferson was already the wide receiver 1 this past year. He took over for Thielen. Ben, you like him to be plus 800 to be the receiving champ this year in terms of yards. Are you willing to take Justin Jefferson in the first round? I know you said you're a wide receiver heavy guy this year, running back or 0 RBs in most of your drafts. Are you taking Justin Jefferson over Cooper Kupp, or are you still giving Kupp that respect?
No, I'm still going Cooper Kupp, just because Allen Robinson was their new addition, so that might take a little bit of time. I'm still going Cooper Kupp. But, yeah, if I had the choice of drafting Justin Jefferson or Dalvin Cook, if they're both on the board and I have that choice, probably going Justin Jefferson, to be honest.
Okay.
I'm taking him over Joe Mixon. I'm taking him over Dalvin Cook.
You have him over Chase?
I do have him over Chase. Okay. Yeah, I do. Just because of the Higgins stuff, bro. At first, I had liked Chase a lot more, but they're expecting Higgins. I mean, he's getting drafted as a wide receiver 1 as well. So he's the guy here. I think Adam Thielen is that possession receiver. Yes, he does steal some touchdowns because he seems to have those games where he always catches 2 touchdowns throughout the season.
With Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, when he's healthy. So I like the volume for Jefferson. I like the coaching change. It's only going to help. So I would draft him over Dalvin Cook, but still behind Cooper Kupp. He is wide receiver 2 for me, though.
Okay, what about you, Ron? Are you buying any Justin Jefferson stock in the first round if you're going all wide receivers to start off your draft?
I'm not, but I am going. I just took a little note. This guy right here. Probably can't read that.
Yeah, we can't read that.
Oh, you're taking Kirk Cousins. You like Kirk Cousins at QB 15.
Dude,
interesting.
Look at these weapons here.
Hey, Ron, you are pulling a Ben because
but y'all are laughing at me for saying that Rodgers might get dropped.
The reason why I'm saying that is because Derek Carr, Ben, he hitched his wagon to Derek Carr in our first breakdown with the AFC West. He's ranked QB 14. So Ron, you're in on Kirk Cousins here at QB 15. Just wanted to point that out.
I am. Because he's getting an offensive-minded coach here. All right. Zimmer, we all know, is a defensive guy. All right. Justin Jefferson's supposed to have a breakout year. I mean, and looky, Adam Thielen is on the roster as well. I mean, how can we forget about this guy?
Looky.
I mean, he has Dalvin Cook, who he could dump the ball off to, who's a great PPR guy. We are talking fantasy here. He's a great PPR guy. Not really a solid number 2 the way that Jones and Dillon are in Green Bay. So don't sleep on Cousins having that year. I'm not going to say MVP, but if I want to sprinkle, I might sprinkle there. But regardless of it, Kirk Cousins this year is somebody who I'm not searching, but if I got my roster and I don't have a QB yet and he's there at, QB 15, I'm definitely taking Kirk Cousins because we know that he can sling it. He slings it a lot to the other team, but he ain't afraid to put the ball in the air. He ain't no, Phillip Rivers, who's going to be dinking and dunking, or older quarterbacks like a Big Ben. This guy, I hate to use it because people use it a lot, but gunslinger mentality, could we dare say that? He's not afraid to throw the rock. New offensive-minded coach, give me Kirk Cousins this year in fantasy.
We got somebody dying on the Carr wagon or Carr Hill, and somebody dying on the Kirk Cousins hill.
Kirk Cousins, we talked about it with
you like that?
Aaron Jones. He's a big volatility guy also because Kirk Cousins can go off. He can be a big guy who gets you a 30-point game sometimes. But he's also going to be a guy that gets you 10 points. And I know that because I've streamed him, and it seems like I just don't have a connection with Kirk Cousins. He hasn't hit for me when I stream him. So
we got to keep an eye on that season long. The Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr QB rankings.
Right? Like I said, they're ranked right next to each other, QB 14 and QB 15.
And the Raiders also just got Josh McDaniels, a very offensive-minded head coach too. So I mean, could be better days for Carr as well.
All right, and Ben, we're talking about Justin Jefferson. We mentioned his counterpart in Adam Thielen. He had 10 touchdowns last year. Do you think he's going to continue being? I know we mentioned it a little bit, but are you in on Adam Thielen is what I'm trying to ask.
Never been a Thielen fan. Never been a Thielen fan.
It's pretty cheap for him at wide receiver 31, though. It's still not biting?
Yeah, no, I'm still not biting. Like I said, I'm looking to get my wide receivers early this year in drafts. So he's kind of that middle guy, maybe a bench player, maybe, but I'm not looking for on my team. If I'm going wide receiver, he's going to be on my fantasy bench. So I'm not looking for him. No, I'm looking to draft running backs when he's getting drafted.
Ron, you're a running back early guy.
Yeah.
So would you look at Thielen later to fill out your roster? Maybe a wide receiver 2, wide flex.
I mean, I think I'm going to get a tattoo that says wide receiver 2 because you guys know me. I love my wide receiver 2.
That's true.
I love my wide receiver. I forgot who it was who we were talking about on one of the other divisions, but I said, I love this
Mike Williams.
Yeah, I know it was a Mike Will, but I forgot who the other guy was. But regardless of it, I always kind of say he's going to draw the best corner. He's going to draw the defenses. That's what wide receiver ones do. Unless they're freaks like this guy and Devontae Adams. I mean, they still get their looks and they still get their scores. But, I mean, Adam Thielen was a wide receiver 1 a couple years ago, and he still has that potential. He had an injury. I know he was out a while. But with this new offense, not to go back to the offensive-minded coach, he's going to get Thielen involved. And I think if he can get some one-on-ones, he's a sleeper, bro. He's a sleeper. So I don't mind Thielen at a wide receiver 31. I mean, as a flex option, would you guys flex him for sure? Is he a definite flex, or he's still like, he's on my bench?
I think he's fringe flex. He can start depending on the matchup. And like I said, he had 10 touchdowns last year. He does have a connection with Kirk Cousins. For him, it's just staying healthy. He is a little bit older this year. And like we were all talking about, Justin Jefferson probably going to take another step forward with everything that's transpired in the offseason with their head coaching change. So,
I mean, Thielen's only one injury away from Jefferson to be wide receiver 1 there too. So,
yeah,
not to wish bad on him. But
he's a possession receiver, bro.
Are you guys buying Dalvin Cook at running back 6? I just have to ask. We haven't talked about him, and he is running back 6 in PPR leagues.
If I know guaranteed he's going to miss games already, I'm out on him. He's an early round running back. I'm not looking to do that this year, so no. I do have some interest in Irv Smith though. I'm punting tight end. I do like the value on him. He's a guy with a high ceiling that could, make big plays. He could catch a slant and take it all the way with his speed. So.
You know who he reminds me of in terms of the type of tight end that he is and his actual output? He reminds me a lot of Evan Ingram. The former tight end from the Giants that everyone was just waiting to break out.
Yeah.
The potential's there. He was injured a little bit last year, Irv Smith, but I definitely like him. He's a Bama guy, and he's going to be part of a high-powered offense. So I definitely see that if you're punting tight end. It's just, like I said, he's just a guy that has to do it. So if you're punting, you got to, take that into consideration. But definitely a good pick late in drafts. Anything else for the Vikings before we move on? Ron and I already declared our love for this team this year with our bets that we're taking on them, and Ron with Kirk Cousins. Anything else on these guys?
No, I think Higgins was the receiver I was talking about, the wide receiver 2. That might have been him when we covered the Bengals. So you got Higgins or Thielen?
Hey, Ron, but not having any tattoos and then saying you should tat wide receiver 2 on you as your first tat ever is crazy, bro.
It's not my first tat ever. I have like 3 of them.
Oh, I didn't know that. My bad. My bad.
All right.
That could potentially be a bet. Oh, yeah, you got to get that wide receiver 2.
That's upping the ante on our usual bet.
Let me find a wide receiver 2 that I'll hitch my wagon to, and we can do him versus Thielen, Ron.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah. You guys can bet on Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr. You can make a top 2 bet on that. All right, well, let's move on from the Vikings. This is a team, again, like I said with the Packers at the end, that we will be talking about a lot this year just because of the expectations for this team. Now let's move on to a team that doesn't quite have the same expectations. It's quite the opposite of the first 2 teams. That is the Chicago Bears. They're another a team with a new coach. No more Matt Nagy. He's no longer there. Last year, he led them to a 6-11 record. They were between Andy Dalton and Justin Fields. They went 3-5 at home, 3-6 on the road, 2-4 against the division. Missed the playoffs at 3rd place. They had an ugly streak from week 6 to week 15 where they went 1-9. Not very good in that 10-game stretch. I mean, they had 6 games decided by 8 points or less, and they were close in those games. And we have a quote here Ron, what's this quote?
I mean, I'm throwing to guys who wouldn't have made 6th string at Ohio State. That's the biggest adjustment. I think it says when they asked him about him missing all those receivers. Now,
did you get ball sack sported, cuz, or is this legit?
I'll be honest. I put it up here for conversation. You know, I didn't that newspaper column that Amber Heard went to. I didn't do my research. So I don't know if this is legit or not. I can't say 100%.
National Enquirer.
But I thought it was a good topic anyway, because I mean, could it be something that he could say? I mean, there's not a lot of talent over there for the kid.
I did hear him say something. It was a little bit more positive than that. And he made the little, the quarterback statement saying that he likes the guys that he has in the locker room, the guys that he's going to battle with, and he's good to go with this team. You look at their odds. Vegas doesn't have a lot of confidence in them. Plus 15,000 to win the Super Bowl. That's towards the bottom of the board. Plus 7,000 to win the NFC Championship. To win the NFC North, I think they're favored to go 4th in this division. They're plus 1,400. So those are the longest odds on the board to win the division. Over under, I saw yesterday on DraftKings, was over under 6.5, minus 155 to the under to make the playoffs. Plus 450, yes, no, minus 650. And Justin Fields, if you're buying him and his progression, plus 8,000 to win MVP. You look at their schedule over here. The NFC North, like I said earlier, they do benefit from playing a weaker AFC East division, so they do have some winnable games. Their strength of schedule is 24th, so it's towards the bottom if you look at what the teams did last year. So maybe there's a chance for the Bears to take a step up from their record last year. But if you look at what they did in the offseason, they're pretty quiet. The biggest move, I think, are their departures. They moved on from Khalil Mack, who went to the Chargers, and Allen Robinson, kind of ugly last year with the team after not getting his deal, goes on and ends up with the Rams. And Andy Dalton, the quarterback that split time with Justin Fields, he's gone now. He's on to the Saints. And they lose Tariq Cohen and Akeem Hicks, also notable names for these guys. What are you guys thinking about with the Bears? Is it going to be a doomsday type of scenario for this team? Are they going to take a step back? I already know where I'm leaning on this team, but I want you guys to give your take. Where are you guys at with the Bears this year?
Yeah, I mean, let's see how Fields is talking about his receiving core and his locker room after they get pounded by the Niners and the Packers, week 1 and 2, because that's what's going to happen. Not very high expectations. One play that I did see and that I'm on the fence about taking was the Bears to be the lowest scoring team this season. That was plus 650. I think that they're pretty game for that. I mean, they don't have much to work with. Fields, young quarterback also. And also, you've seen so many of these young quarterbacks walk into great situations. And then you see these guys like Fields and like Wilson with the Jets that walk into these kind of dumpster fires, and you feel bad for the guy, but how is it going to get better? You know what I mean? Yes, Matt Nagy is gone, but it seems like they lost a lot, and the team really has no direction, in my opinion. So with the way that their schedule starts, I'm expecting them to go under that 6.5. And if even if the number's at 6, you're going to get way closer odds than to pick them. So I would even take it at 6 if 6.5 isn't available.
You talk about the situation, and Justin Fields, just to give you guys some context, the wide receiver 2 right now on their depth chart, I just checked, is expected to be Byron Pringle from the Chiefs. They're doing him a disservice. Hopefully Justin Fields is able to survive this, because this is the type of stuff that can ruin a career, honestly. How bad things can go here for the Bears and what they're doing with Justin Fields. So hopefully he can overcome it. But I like that over under 6.5. I think it's pretty safe. I have them right around 4 wins. I'll drink the juice on that. I'll take that for sure. What about you, Ron?
Yeah, I'm completely out on the Bears, not touching them with anything, man. Fantasy bets, anything like that. I have them at a ceiling, like max 7 wins. So if I would bet, I would take the 6.5, or like Ben said, screw it, take the push at 6. But there's just nothing there. And you talk about rookie quarterbacks who go with great, they're put into teams that are already kind of set up, or other ones that go into dumpster fires. I mean, it just got a whole lot worse for Justin Fields, because Ben was talking about how, as long as if he doesn't have great players, but he goes into a good system, then he could have a chance. Prime example last year was Mac Jones in New England. He had obviously one of the greatest coaches of all time, if not the greatest coach. So he could find ways to win even as a rookie quarterback. But Justin Fields doesn't even have that. He's already going through a coaching change in his second year. I mean, they lost guys like Khalil Mack. Allen Robinson wasn't great, but I mean, we can say that he was the most talented receiver. Even who was their running back that left? Cohen. I mean, he was a stud there, for a little while. He racked up some fantasy wins for you. I mean, they're taking away from this kid all his weapons and giving him a new coach in the second year. It's going to be bad in Chicago this year. I mean, really, really bad. So I would do Matt Uber. See, we don't even know who that. Well, I don't even know who that is. So if I'm betting anything, I'm taking the unders, but I'm not touching anybody in fantasy. The Bears you're probably not even going to watch the Bears, because they're not going to have any primetime games unless it's, maybe against the Packers and they want to put Aaron Rodgers up there. But you're not going to hear a lot from the Bears this year.
Yeah. So you talk about fantasy. We have their rankings up here, all towards the middle of the board. I will point out Darnell Mooney. He is a guy that wasn't even ranked last year. So to see him at wide receiver 21.
He did decent.
He did good. I know, that's what I'm saying.
He put up stats down the stretch.
He played good. I had him on my team. I had him in my flex a couple of weeks, and definitely was a good pick, just because there's nobody else there to throw to. That's where I'm going to start the conversation. Are you guys buying Darnell Mooney at his new ADP now that people have recognized he's a wide receiver 1? Ron likes his wide receiver 2s, but Darnell Mooney, he is a wide receiver 1 on his team. Are you guys willing to take Darnell Mooney and chase a wide receiver 1 on a bad team?
No chance. I'm willing to pick him up if somebody gets frustrated with a bad 4 weeks to start the season and dumps on him, but no chance that I would draft Darnell Mooney. Nope.
Yeah, I mean, if he comes along in a trade, maybe just, to say, because like we said, the Bears aren't going to do much. And who do you kind of want to get those garbage points for you? Teams that are going to be throwing the ball late, behind in a lot of games, and really not going to be running the ball. So that's kind of the only reason that I would get them, is because you don't see the Bears being ahead in a lot of games. You see, and Justin Fields, everybody knows he can't really throw the rock. He's a very athletic quarterback. Out of high school, he was drafted. College, same thing, that mobile quarterback style, really not known for his arm. But like you guys said, it's not somebody Mooney's not somebody who can just completely go by your radar. If you can pick him up somehow, put him on your roster, but he's just there. If he goes off, you're lucky that he's sitting on your bench and you're like, hey, let me insert this guy, because, he's had back-to-back, or 3 weeks with over 15 points or something like that. Yeah. Flex him.
The other guy I'm going to bring up is probably the other main target. We haven't talked about him yet, but it is Cole Kmet. If you talk about the depth chart and who's there for the Bears, the other benefactor of Allen Robinson leaving is Cole Kmet. Ben, you're talking about punting tight end. That's a position that a lot of people like to punt. Are you taking a shot on Cole Kmet at tight end 16?
Definitely taking a shot at Cole Kmet. Ron said how Fields isn't so developed in the passing game, and so dinking and dunking to Cole Kmet. He's a very athletic tight end also, who can get some yak. We saw him with some tight end 1 weeks last year as well. So I think if anybody at their ADP is worth drafting on this team, I'm taking a shot at Cole Kmet, at tight end. If I punt on tight end, I'm taking 2 tight ends late. He'd be one of my picks for guys that I would plug in there, see how it works out. But other than that, no. Back to Darnell Mooney, is there any chance that he just has an Allen Robinson type year last year, where he's just non-existent as a wide receiver 1?
No, I don't think so, because he's already proven to have some rapport with Justin Fields. They had some success last year, and Allen Robinson last year was just a bad situation. He's playing through injury. He was playing on the franchise tag. He didn't get his deal before in the offseason. People were saying that he wanted out, and it was to the point where Allen Robinson, you didn't know if he was playing some weeks. You checked the stat. I had him on my team. He killed me. I drafted him, I think, in like the 3rd round or something like that. Spent considerable draft
him at
capital.
all?
Dude, I was caught in a situation where I was holding him, waiting to see him pop off for a game, waiting to see him go, and I think I ended up trading him, but for close to nothing. It's just, you draft a guy 3rd round. There's a little pride involved there when it comes to trading them. But anyways, needless to say, I think Allen Robinson, that was a special situation just because of everything that was going on. I'm higher on Darnell Mooney. I think he'll be better than what Allen Robinson was. I mean, he was already last year, so I think he's going to be decent. I don't know if I draft him, though. I'd hope to have my wide receivers filled before the time. And so looking at him for wide receiver 21. So, yeah, I'm not in on Mooney, but I do like Komet, to your point, if I'm punting tight end, which I always end up doing.
Gotcha.
I mean, fantasy, if you can get a wide receiver 1 on your squad and he's there, fuck it, take him. You never know. So if he's available, I'd say take him, but 16th, 15th round, some shit like that.
Another guy that I had and traded, man, I don't know what I was thinking last year, tying myself to the Bears like this, but another guy that I had, David Montgomery, running back 16. He was the guy that I thought was going to be the workhorse. But like Ron said, he was hit or miss. He had his games. He was injured for a little while. You saw Khalil Herbert come on. His ADP, I think, has dropped a little bit because last year people were high enough on him that he was going in about the 2nd round. Now he's probably 3rd, 4th, maybe 5th, depending on your draft. Are any interest on David Montgomery for you guys, or you're staying far away?
Hell no. Far away as I can. The Bears are going to be behind in a lot of games, and they ain't going to be scoring points running the ball with David Montgomery. So I'm out.
Facts. Plain and simple, just like Ron said. You're going to be behind, no real direction with that team. Definitely not interested in Montgomery.
Okay. All right. Well, one thing's for certain. We are all low on the Bears this year. None of us have them making the playoffs. I'm confident enough to take their under 6.5.
Making that consensus, Roland.
Yeah, we'll make that a consensus pod bet under 6.5.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. I like that.
We have Ron said he sees a best case scenario at 7, but it takes a lot to get there. And I have them slotted from 4 to 5. So pretty confident there. But let's move on. We spent a lot of time on the Bears. And let's get to this next team. The team we started out the conversation with, on the team starring on Hard Knocks this year, the Lions. They're led by this guy, Jared Goff. His first year, they went 3-13-1. It was pretty rough. 3-5 at home. And they did not win a single game on the road last year. They were the opposite of road warriors. They were 2-4 against the division. 4th place, missed the playoffs. Did not win a game until week 13. They lost
some tough games, bro.
They had a tie before they registered a win last year. So put that in perspective. 8 games decided by 1 score or less. They were 2-6 in those games, so did not fare well in those close games. But that goes to what we were talking about earlier. This is a team that fights hard. They're going to find themselves in a lot of games. So, and about half of their games were decided by 8 points or less. They're right there, and they were actually profitable against the spread team. We're going to talk about bets later. That they were profitable against the spread.
They were, dude. They covered all.
The back door was always open.
Hell yeah, especially that game when they were down 18 or 21 or something like that, and they came back and covered. It was like the worst bad beat of the year or some shit.
I think they were 10-6 or 10-6-1 or something like that against the spread last year. So profitable team, even though their record did not show it. But hey, good teams win, great teams cover, like we all like to say. So let's move on to what Vegas is thinking of them this year. Not too highly, plus 15,000 to win the Super Bowl, plus 6,000 to win the NFC Championship. They are favored to come in 3rd place in the NFC North, though, plus 1,000. Their season total over under 6.5, minus 120 to the over.
Interesting.
Don't want to think about them making the playoffs yet. They are plus 400, yes, no, minus 550. Jared Goff to win MVP. I just put it up there because I think this is funny. He's plus 20,000 to win MVP, but his running back His backfield counterpart, Deandre Swift, has shorter odds at plus 15,000. So that just goes to show you what Vegas thinks about Jared Goff there. We have their schedule pictured over here to the right. I do think they have some winnable games. Their season total is a little trickier to me. We'll get into that after we look at what they did in the offseason. Pretty quiet, although they did have the number 2 pick. They took the hometown kid, Aiden Hutchinson. They had a couple of losses. They lost Trey Flowers on the edge, so they got a hedge guy. Before we get into anything, I just want to ask you guys to start off. Did you like the Hayden Hutchinson pick? Do you think he's going to fit in well with the Bears? He is the number 2 pick. I think he's the highest pick we've talked about so far.
He's like Dan Campbell's son, it looks like. I think he's going to fit right in just because he's kind of has that grit, especially as a defensive end coming from this college that he came from. I like it. I like the pick. Their defense is probably going to be on the field a lot because their offense isn't, as talented as most teams are. I think he fits right in. I don't hate the pick. I mean, it was a guy who could potentially have gone number 1. So you got him at number 2. Fuck it. I mean, if you passed on him, you might be kicking yourself in the ass. So why not just take him?
All right, Ben, did you like the pick?
Yeah, I did like it. I liked it a lot. They needed some pass rush help. They drafted DB last year in the top 5 pick. So the defense again. I mean, I think that until they have their surefire quarterback pick to replace Jared Goff, they're not going to touch quarterback in the first round. So what are they doing? They're getting some grit, like Ron said. That was one of their mottos on Hard Knocks also. I mean, Campbell was wearing a cap that said grit. So I'm sure the boys from Barstool will be stopping by there for Grit Week for a talk with him. But no, man, they were in a lot of games. They lost a lot of heartbreakers. That one to the Ravens, I remember, was really, really bad. Where Tucker hit a damn near 57-yard field goal to beat them at the clock after Lamar hit a crazy pass. So it had Campbell in tears by week 3. He was crying for a win. So I expect better things this season from them. That stretch at the end of the season where you got New York, you got Carolina, you got Chicago. Those are 3 teams that are probably going to be tanking by that point because they're going to miss playoffs and they're going to be wanting that better pick. So I could see the Lions reeling off some wins at the end there. And even Green Bay, if they have the division won, they usually rest Rodgers that last week of the season too.
And they did win that game last year. They played in week 17 last year and won that game.
So that's 6.5. I'm chilling on that 6.5. I do think that they have potential to get to 7 wins.
Yeah, too close to call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm interested in them this year, though, bro. I am.
Yeah, and again, like I said in the beginning of the show, they're kind of that underdog story. Why not them? I'm not saying that they have to go and win the division, but you're rooting for them, especially a team that you see on Hard Knocks that you get to follow, get a little bit more inside view of them. The way I look at it is this: you need 7 wins. In my opinion, you're already getting 2 from Chicago, so you only need 5 wins in 15 weeks.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Ron. I'm glad you brought that up because I want to say I think the total is very playable if they win their first 2 games. They got Philadelphia and Washington. I know people are kind of high on Philly this year, but Philly is still a team that can throw out a dud. And who's to say that they don't throw out a dud week 1 in Detroit? They catch them both at home and they win their first 2 games. I mean, things could get interesting because Ben already pointed out the end of the season stretch.
And then look who you have week 4, Seattle at home, a team that we talked about earlier in one of our division breakdowns who we were not high on at all. So ceiling for them, 3 out of the first 5 games, they could be 3-2, and you only need 3 wins the rest of the year, playing Chicago twice after that.
That early bye week sucks because it gets tough. Look at the favor they did them on Thanksgiving Day. Hence to my point, Roland, about them wanting my boy to win MVP. Look at that, bro. That's going to be ugly, dog.
At 11:30 in the morning.
Thanksgiving Day in Detroit, bro.
No one's going to watch, though. It's the first game. People still waking up on the West Coast.
No breaks.
But they still got Jacksonville. They got that stretch. So
they have the winnable games.
Jacksonville, New York, Carolina. Man.
I mean, I don't see why not, man. I think we should jump on over 6.5 here.
I do want to point out we were on their under last year. We cashed that. That was one of the pod bets. We did cash on them. Hey, maybe we have a good read on these Lions. Ben is our hard.
Did we deserve to cash it? Did we deserve to cash it last year with all those close games that they played? I think that we got it comfortably because they only won 4 games, but I kind of do like this over just because there's no way that a Campbell-led team quits to end the year. There's no way. So all of those games are winnable against teams that are tanking. And we're already talking about them possibly, winning 2 out of their first 5, if not 3. So I do like the over. I do like it in.
Lock it in.
We're drinking the Hard Knocks juice, and it just debuted last night. Hey, only 25% of the podcast have seen the episode, and we're already drinking that Hard Knocks juice, dog. That's horrible.
I'll take it though. I do.
Well, we have a lot of faith in the 25% guy. We have a lot of faith.
Who knows? Like we said, they fight pretty hard for their coach. They are a good against the spread team, so that means they are there pretty close. Although it can be misleading with the back door, like Ben was talking about. But they could still steal a game here, with some of these games that they're getting at home. Like who's to say they don't beat Miami at home?
Who knows? They don't beat the Vikings, right?
Well, I mean, they could. I mean, I'm just saying. If they get them at home, who knows? I mean, you got that home field advantage, Ford Field. I mean, Detroit.
The NFC North plus 1,000.
I'm buying the over, bro. I passed up on Kirk, and I'm in on Jared Goff. We didn't mention Jared Goff's name once, and we're on the over 6.5.
I was gonna say it's gonna be pretty crazy for us this year, especially me and Ron, if we're attaching ourselves to Kirk Cousins and Jared Goff this year.
No, I'm not going to pause on the Jared Goff. I'm talking about wins here.
Hey,
take my name off the Jared Goff train.
Well, okay, Jared Goff doesn't have to be the guy that wins them these games. No, they do have a good defense. They do have a good running back. They've had some guys that emerged in fantasy, and that's what we're about to jump into. Now that we've given our pick for them, what were you going to say, Ron? Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. You had the additions. Anytime you get a wide receiver from Alabama, you never know what's going to happen there. I mean, that's true. That's wide receiver right there. You get a Bama receiver on your squad, that you're getting talent no matter if he was the 1, 2, or 3 at Bama. Don't sleep on that. They got him 12 overall in the first round.
Yes,
I mean Davison Williams. Hey, wide receiver from Bama. Is he the guy who had a little injury though?
He had the ACL
coming out of the ACL.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to be
talent,
ready,
bro.
Yeah, that's a good call out, Ron. I'm glad you brought that up because he was their second first round pick that they got from the Vikings. It looks like so. Good for them. Hopefully, Jameson Williams can contribute. Like you said, or Ron said, Alabama wide receiver U. They do put them out there, so hopefully he's the next one in line. But we have a guy pictured here. I want to start the fantasy conversation off with. That's Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's the guy who burst onto the scene. Ben was telling us he was a league winner for him. He was a league winner for guys all around fantasy because you got him on the free agency wire. And if you were lucky enough to have him in the late game or the late part of the season, the playoffs, that's when he went off. I'm just throwing this out there. It's going to lead into my thoughts on the guy. Didn't have a double-digit scoring output until week 13, until he went double digits in 5 of the last 6 games, hence being a league winner. I'm not in on him at wide receiver 22. There's a lot of other guys in that range that I'd rather have. Ben, are you in on your boy again?
Here, Mooney. That's wide receiver 21 and wide receiver 22.
Shit, man. I'll go Mooney. I'll go Mooney.
Both guys were league winners because they were both waiver guys last year that did really good down the stretch. Like you, Roland, I mean, they did get a new wide receiver. Yeah. They got that new weapon, that big body, that number 1. St. Brown does, run around in the slot.
They got DJ
Chark as well. I'm not big on DJ Chark, but St. Brown did have a very good rapport with Jared Goff, bro. I mean, I am still buying in on the guy. I would say he's a flex wide receiver. I wouldn't put him at a wide receiver 2, but I'd be comfortable with him at my flex.
You would?
For sure.
So you like him at the flex?
Really?
In a full-point PPR league? Full-point PPR league.
So I'm just throwing this out there. So you're a believer. You're on the other side of this for me because I'm looking at it like, damn, this guy didn't do shit until week 13. But you're thinking he's going to continue this play because
I'm thinking the rapport is there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
He's not running crazy routes. He's just being that little slot guy that gets open. And I think that he can do that well. And Goff doesn't push the ball down the field. So those are routes that, he needs to take advantage of. I'd like it to continue.
Are you in on St. Brown? At your flex?
No, not even at my flex, man. The question to answer between him and Mooney, I would go Mooney just because of the quarterback situation. I think that Justin Fields can get a little bit more loose in the pocket. And if you're going to throw it to Mooney, you're going to throw it, longer patterns down the field. He's a little bit more explosive to me. So I would go with Mooney just because another guy that on your list here is TJ Hawkinson. He's a red zone target for me. We just like Ben said, Goff doesn't like to push the ball down the field as much, which means that he's a guy who looks for his tight end, a big tight end in TJ Hawkinson. So between Mooney and St. Brown, I would go with Mooney, and I'm not very high on St. Brown either, just because, look at what you just put up there. He went, didn't have a double-digit scoring output until week 13, so he not a fluke, but not somebody who I'm willing to chase just because they had a great second half of the season last year.
Okay.
Well, he's wide receiver 22, so that means he's being drafted as a wide receiver 2. If you're getting him out of flex, you're definitely not chasing him.
Yeah, I don't even believe. Yeah, I don't even. I would take a lot of other guys. A wide receiver 2 guy right here is not going to add him to my wide receiver 2 list. There's a lot of other wide receiver 2s out there.
I got him as a flex guy. I like him to have a better year than Mooney.
Okay, all right. This is a guy that I haven't bought in on yet. He was a rookie last year. I want to say, or a year 2 guy. I know he's young. Correct me. Deandre Swift. I haven't drafted him, but I'm finding myself in mock drafts that I'm doing towards the back of the drafts, like 11 and 12. He's the guy that's there in that slot. He's a good receiving back. If you're talking about PPR, he's known for busting off big runs. He scores in bunches at times for his team. Are you guys in on Deandre Swift at running back 8 if you're drafting towards the back of the pack at the turn?
Ben, go ahead, because this
is tough. The decision between like him, Chubb, Aaron Jones, those guys in the end of the second round, end of the first round or early second. Mm-hmm. I was a Deandre Swift owner last year up until he got hurt. And he was, on a tear. Yeah, he was a top 5 running back for, at least half of the season prior to him getting injured. Jamal Williams did, have a pretty good season last year in those games where he was absent. So I could see them working him into the game more often to save Deandre Swift a bit, make him last. But I'm in on Deandre Swift just because, like you mentioned, the receiving aspect that he brings. He's a very good pass-catching running back. He's a Georgia running back, bro. We know that the Georgia running backs are bell cow running backs. He was a guy who was, the starter at Georgia. In his short time in the league, he has, put up very respectable numbers prior to him being injured. So I am in on Deandre Swift. I do like him over guys like Nick Chubb, for example. I would take him over Nick Chubb. I would take him over Aaron Jones for sure as well.
Same. I'm on the same side as you on DeAndre Swift. I would take him over Aaron Jones. I'd take him over Chubb. It's a toss. Mixon and him are a little bit closer for me, but I still lean DeAndre Swift. I do think he's that bell cow guy, and I think he's more of a reliable receiver than Mixon. So I like him towards the end of the first round for sure.
Kamara or Swift?
I'll take Swift just because you don't know what's still going to go on with Kamara, his legal situation, and you still don't know what the Saints are going to be this coming year with Winston coming off of injury as their quarterback. So I'd go Swift.
Some love for Swift. Ron, how do you feel about Swift?
I think we're going to have to make it a consensus, man. He's on a team that we have overall headed in a positive direction. He's not that star on a shitty team. He's a star on an upcoming team who we feel is going to do, better this year. So why not take him? It's tough where he's sitting because if you don't take him there, you probably won't get him anymore. And then you're probably not going to have a decent running back after, if he's there and he's one of the later fringe guys and you're like, shit, him or a wide receiver, you're pretty much making a decision, to be like, if I get a wide receiver now instead of him, I'm not going to have any choices left at a running back. So he's in that spot, and I think you have to take your chance on him. He's a proven guy. He's not somebody who we're going to say, well, he has a high ceiling, so let's go ahead and take him. He already has a rapport, like you guys said. Right? Yeah, he's proved it, and he's that Austin Eckler kind of running back. I'm not going to say PPR God the way Eckler is, but he has that chance. He has that ability. with the wide receivers, maybe breaking out a little bit more for Goff, it could open up the running game. We're talking about the Lions beefing up their defense, so maybe they, the defense will get other teams off the field, which will give the Lions more of an opportunity offensively this year. They weren't on the field a lot last year, because their defense wasn't as great. So if it all works together, I think I like DeAndre Swift here, man. I'll definitely take a chance on him, and he's young. So
let me go back to that one of the scenarios that you brought up in the back of the first round, early second. If you're looking at the choice between a wide receiver and a running back in that slot, would you go with the guy Stephon Diggs or DeAndre Swift in that situation? That's a guy that I've seen in that same spot.
I would take Swift over him. I think I would take Debo over Swift, though. I got Debo rated over Stephon Diggs myself. My wide receivers.
Would you take CeeDee Lamb over DeAndre Swift?
No.
You take Swift all day? Okay.
Yeah, the only wide receiver. I would I would take. Swift.
You're wrong. You're wrong on that one.
That's fine. The wide receivers I'm taking before him are obviously Kupp, Jefferson, Jamar Chase.
Devontae Adams or DeAndre Swift?
No. I'm not doing Devontae Adams. I like Swift. I mean,
why are you so high on Swift? You're like you said you were going to be at wide receivers a lot this year.
Because those are just the wide receivers that I don't like. The guys that you're mentioning. Like I said, I like Debo.
So what wide receiver? Okay,
you're not going Devontae Adams over DeAndre Swift.
No.
Is it? Okay.
God, I'm so glad you're in our league this year.
That's a close one.
But I'm saying because I would go Debo before I went Devontae Adams, and Debo's ranked below Adams. So
I don't know. This is on some Derek. This is some Derek Carr shit right here.
Because you have Debo as a wide receiver, as a first round
wide receiver 5. Yeah, like wide receiver 5.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. We all have our rankings. So would you take Debo in the first round in any of your drafts?
No, I would take him as my comeback pick right in the second, though.
Oh, okay. I'm going to say you don't have to spend that much. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I can't wait to draft, bro. I really can't wait to draft.
Something that's been going on behind the scenes. We are gathering intel on each other as we're doing this. we're all in a draft together. It's not the We Talking About Sports podcast league, but it is another league that we're starting up. And that's going to be real interesting. But anything else on the Lions? Ron mentioned him. Ben, are you a Hawkinson guy?
I am a Hawk guy. Yep. Okay. Down with Hawkinson.
Where's tight end 7? Is that like round 8, round 9-ish?
And that's kind of where you feel safe taking a guy like Hawkinson, a guy who you can just plug in as starting tight end, and you feel like he's going to be one of those top 10 tight ends. So no matter what, you're plugging in a tight end number 1 every week, if he just performs to his standards. So based on his draft position, that's like where I would want to go with tight end right there, where it's just an easy pick for you. Oh, I get Hawkinson in the 8th round, 9th round. Badass. My tight end spot's filled. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What about you, Ron? Are you taking Hawkinson in those 8th, 9th round?
I've never really been a huge tight end kind of guy, man. I mean, if I take him after that, I really don't mind getting a tight end 11th, 12th round, just because I want to stack up on wide receivers and, running backs if I can. They don't really produce if you stop and think about it. If it's not, guys in the past like Gronk or Kelsey or, the new guy from the Falcons, as well, him. It's just you can fairly, wait. I don't think Hawkinson is a guy who's going to produce 10 to 12 points a week, 13 to 15. He's a solid 8, 9 points. If he gets a touchdown, I think he'll hit the 12, 13 point mark. But no, I even think that's a little bit early for, his draft prediction. So I would wait on him.
Would you take Pitts or Dawson Knox from the Bills? I'm not Pitts, Hawkinson or Dawson Knox, excuse me.
There you go.
I would go with Knox just because I think Josh Allen's going to be slinging it. And I was going to say Diggs. I would definitely take Diggs. I know you guys were comparing it to somebody else, but I would go with Diggs.
Diggs or Swift?
Yeah, I would go. It's just Josh Allen, man. He's going to be slinging the rock. If Ben wants him, Ben thinks he's going to get MVP this year. He's got to be throwing the ball to somebody, and he loves to sling that rock, man.
I would go Hawkinson over Knox just because O.J. Howard is there with the Bills now too, and he's going to be seeing some playing time. So, yes, Dawson Knox is still going to be the starting tight end, but O.J. Howard is a guy who pretty athletic with a good QB, can do some work. So I like Hawkinson, bro, especially where he's being drafted.
Let me ask you one more comparison, Ben. This one's just for you. Hawkinson or Darren Waller?
Oh, Darren Waller, bro.
Oh, Waller too.
Okay.
That's
All right. Well, I'm just asking because they're ranked right next to each other. They're like 5 and 7. Yeah, they're 5 and 7. And
I didn't think they'd be that.
But the drop, but it's because the drop off in tight end is that big.
Yeah.
From like 5 to 7, right?
From
top 5 tight ends.
Guys.
Yeah, because number 6 is Dalton Schultz, Dallas Cowboys tight end.
Boys, you see,
And,
not that I'm a homer kind of guy, but I would take Schultz over Hawkinson. You know,
but he's also going like a round or 2 before him, bro.
Yeah, but I mean, if I'm saying Schultz is somebody who when that tight end position comes up, like you said, I could get Schultz and say, okay, I don't have to worry about a tight end. To where if that position comes up with Hawkinson, I'm like, let me pass and just get a mediocre tight end later because they could still produce the same.
Yeah, I get that. And the last one I want to ask, just because I think Hawkinson's an interesting guy this year, is Hawkinson or Goddard for you guys, because there is 7 and 8 right there. I'd go. Shit, this is tough. I'd go Goddard. I like Jalen Hurts a little bit more than Jared Goff, although you are in for some frustrating games too with that guy. But I like Goddard at 8.
I would take Hawk over Goddard.
Yeah, I'll take Hawkinson as well.
Okay, all right. So we do like some guys on this team. Just because you're historically a bad team does not mean you can't produce some good fantasy players over the years, and the Lions have done that. So Ben is in on St. Brown. Me and Ron are not. Sounds like we're all pretty much high on Deandre Swift, except for Ron. You're not so much in on Swift.
Yeah, no, I made it a consensus. I'm not saying that I'm in total agreements with you guys, but if he's there and you have to take him, unless you're gonna get trash after that, he's somebody who can say, you know what, fine, I'm comfortable taking him. You're not forced to take him, but if he's there, you kind of have to, just because you're going to miss out. So,
well, one thing that was a consensus, and it's not something that I had written down, coming into the pod, what was the pod bet that we made on the Lions, and that is the over under 6.5.
Oh, for sure.
We do have them at the over. That is a pod bet going into 2022. We are going to take them over 6.5 at that minus 120. And we do like a couple of their fantasy players. As we're wrapping this up, guys, is there anything
that
we got to say?
That Bears under is official.
Yeah. Okay,
I wrote it too. Look,
we got 2 plays.
Let's go through them all. I was going to see if you guys wanted to make other comments, but let's just wrap it all up in terms of our bets.
No, go through go through each team, and we'll just kind of touch our favorite bet.
All right. So in conclusion, with the Bears, we just went over the Lions, so we were on that over 6.5. On the Bears, we're all consensus on the under 6.5 with these guys. So we are playing with the
Bears under 6.5.
Yep. Bears under 6.5. Lions over 6.5 so far.
Lions over. Mm-hmm.
Going over here.
Nothing consensus, I think.
There's nothing consensus, but Ron, you were on them to win the NFC North. You like that at plus 265.
Yeah, just because those odds are juicy.
And if I were to choose between the over under 9 and to make the playoffs, you know what? I'm just gonna say they're gonna make the playoffs. I'll take that at minus 115. Just drink a little less juice. Maybe they get there with 9 and 8, a game improvement over where they were last year at 8 and 9. So I'll take that to make the playoffs. Ben, you said you like Justin Jefferson plus 800?
But I got nothing. I'm not putting down on nothing here.
All right. Well, then let's move over here to the Packers, and I think we all said we're not on anything.
We didn't really touch anything on the Packers.
Okay, well, nothing.
Obviously to win the NFC North, but at minus 190, that's a lot of juice. If you can get the Vikings at plus 265, might as well put your money there.
Facts. All right. So in conclusion, pod bets. We're betting on the worst teams in the division. Gonna make for some interesting Sundays.
Ain't no square podcast.
But we are on the under with the Bears, under 6.5. Drink a little bit of juice there at minus 155. And we are on the Lions over 6.5, minus 120. Anything else you guys want to add before we end the podcast? It was a fun one. We went over the NFC North. I know it's not always the most exciting, but it's been fun.
No, man, it was fucking awesome just to gain the knowledge, because it does help with our fantasy stuff, and it does help knowing all the teams and all the players, because as we all know, injuries happen in fantasy, and you're always kind of go back to, hey, what did I say on the pod, or what did Ron or Ben or Roland say on this player on the pod? So all this information helps, regardless of whether it's a shitty team or a bad team or an ugly division or a stacked division. So I like it, man.
Yeah, I like the way we talked it out on this one. I mean, we pretty much came on here knowing that we under, pretty much as a podcast. But once we got to the Lions, that was pretty much a curveball of just talking through it and talking ourselves into loving the Lions, bro. Like I said, drinking that Hard Knocks juice the day after the premiere.
Martin Mendez is definitely gonna like that. Definitely gonna like.
And it's gonna be real exciting the first 2 weeks of the season, because, like I pointed out, I think that can make or break the bet those first 2 games of the season. So it'll be fun. NFC North. It's been a good podcast. We're gonna come at you guys with another divisional breakdown, trying to save the NFC East and the AFC East, since those are the 2 home teams for the podcast between the Cowboys and the Bills. But definitely going to get to those before the end of the season. And I don't know if you guys are down, but I think we should make it a third year in a row that we do some of these positional lists. We haven't done a top 5 yet, but maybe next podcast we can open up with a top 5, probably start with the quarterbacks, if you guys are down. And you know what? We'll bust out the AFC East next week. We've been going between the AFC and NFC, but let's do the AFC East next week, because we are going to do a top 5 quarterback list, and they got Mr. Josh Allen, who should be on everyone's list.
No,
I'm down with that, man. Hell yeah!
All right, well, AFC East is coming up next week, and thank you guys for being in the comments, everybody that chimed in throughout the podcast. And as always, like and subscribe. We are on YouTube, Twitter. You see our handle down there at We Talkin' Sports 1. And you can find us on all streaming platforms. So it's been a fun one. Talk to you guys again next week.